Hello and welcome back. This is our second video in our video series for Chapter 4. And in this video, we'll be talking about 4.2 cofactors, because sometimes enzymes need a helping hand in order to carry out their functions. Before we go into the content, as per usual, let's have a look at the learning outcomes for this lesson. I hope that by the end of this video, you should be able to define what is a cofactor and also explain the three types of cofactors and the functions of each of them. Now, let's move on and talk about what is a cofactor. A cofactor is a non-protein molecule that is needed by some enzymes to function efficiently. So not all enzymes will need cofactors, but many of them do. Cofactors bind to the active sites of enzymes, and they can be there tightly and permanently, or loosely and temporarily. Cofactors can be divided into three types, which is metal ions, coenzymes, and prosthetic groups. Now, a word of caution, try not to get confused between cofactors and coenzymes. Dua perkataan ni nampak macam mirip, tapi actually maksudnya berbeza. So, jangan tertukarlah di antara cofactor dengan coenzyme. Now, let's learn more about each of these cofactors. This is a table summarizing the three types of cofactors along with their traits, some examples, and also their functions. Let's have a look at the first row of the table. For metal ions, these are inorganic ions that will bind to the enzymes temporarily. Here are some examples. They can exist as ions, for example, chloride ions, potassium ions, and calcium ions, or they can be as minerals such as iron and copper. The function of metal ions is to activate the enzyme. They will change the shape of the active site into more suitable shape for the substrate. So, dia macam tolong untuk kasing ngam bentuk active site untuk substrate masuk. So, the second type of cofactor is coenzymes, which is this pink row right here. Coenzymes are organic molecules, and they also bind to the active site temporarily. Here are some examples. I don't remember the full names of them right now, so let's just go with the abbreviations. We have FAD, FMN, NAD+, NADP+, coenzyme A, CoQ, water-soluble vitamins except vitamin C, and these are all examples of coenzymes, or they could also be precursors of coenzymes. Precursors of coenzymes, maksudnya, dia benda itu bukanlah coenzyme, tapi nanti bila diperlukan, dia akan berubah bentuk ataupun akan ada reaction untuk mengubah bentuk dia, supaya dia boleh menjadi coenzyme. That is what is meant by a precursor of coenzyme. Now, what is the function of all these coenzymes? Their function is to carry substance. For example, an electron or a functional group from one enzyme to another. During reactions, whether it's at the first enzyme or the second enzyme, these coenzymes will be modified and they can regenerate back. Coenzymes are only needed in small concentrations. We're going to see more of coenzymes when we go to the upcoming chapters, especially chapters 5 and 6. So, nanti kita akan tengok lagi coenzyme ini. Okay, moving on to the third type of cofactor, it is prosthetic groups. Prosthetic groups are organic molecules that will bind to the enzymes permanently. Examples of prosthetic groups are heme, iron-sulfur cluster, which is shortened as FES here. Iron-sulfur clusters, you can find them, examples of iron-sulfur clusters are ferredoxins, NADH dehydrogenase, CoQ, and cytochrome C reductase, which you can find in the electron transfer system. Di bawah sini, e-transfer system, ini merujuk kepada electron transfer. The functions of prosthetic groups is mainly to carry substance. Example of substance that they can carry are electrons. So that was quite the long explanation. I hope you'll refer to this table from time to time, especially if you need to remember what is the trait of that type of cofactor or its function. Now let's move on to the upcoming slides and have a look at the examples of each type of cofactor. We're going to start with examples of minerals or metal ions as cofactors. There are 7 major minerals that can be used as metal ions, which are calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, nitrogen, and also chlorine. For calcium ion, which is some of the more common ones or more regularly seen examples. So we're going to go into calcium and also potassium. When we talk about calcium, it is usually used as a cofactor in nervous transmission, muscle contraction, and blood regulation. So we're gonna see this even more in the upcoming chapters. So calcium ini sangat diperlukan sebab dia cofactor untuk dalam kita punya neuron. So that's nervous transmission, muscle contraction, pergerakan otot kita perlukan calcium, and also blood regulation. Blood regulation is not only going to involve our blood tissue, but also many other organs in the body. Another mineral that we're going to focus on here is potassium. Potassium, or K, is a cofactor in carbohydrate metabolism. So when we need to break down glucose in order to get energy, to metabolize glucose to get energy, we're going to need potassium. Potassium is also a major cation of intracellular fluid for the ionic basis of nerve and muscle excitability. Maksud ayat kedua di sini, kita akan jumpa banyak potassium dalam intracellular fluid, yaitu cecair yang ada di sekeliling tisu kita. And it is used a lot for our nerves and also for our muscles. Kita akan belajar lagi pasal dia bila kita masuk dalam chapter berkenaan dengan coordination. Okay, so that is what I want to talk to you about for these examples. So kita, untuk contoh lah. Untuk contoh, kita akan fokus kepada 2 mineral di bawah ini saja. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the two examples of the next type of cofactor, which is vitamins. Vitamins are under coenzymes, and we're going to have a look at this table, which has vitamin B2, niacin, and vitamin B3. So these vitamins are also given a chemical name, and they will have their related cofactor. So let's have a look at this row by row. We start with vitamin B2. The chemical name for vitamin B2 is riboflavin. Riboflavin is precursor to these cofactors. So, bila diperlukan, riboflavin boleh diubah menjadi flavin adenine dinucleotide, which is FAD, or flavin mononucleotide, which is FMN. For the vitamin niacin, its chemical name is nicotinic acid, and nicotinic acid is a precursor to nicotinamide adenine nucleotide, which is NAD+, or nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, which is NADP+. Tapi biasanya orang ingat yang di belakang sajalah sebab nama dia terlalu panjang. Saya baca pun susah. So if you need to remember, you can simply remember NAD+ dan NADP+. Okay, so niacin digunakan untuk menghasilkan 2 cofactor ini. Whereas vitamin B3 has chemical name pantothenic acid, and it will be the precursor to coenzyme A. So, apa tujuan kita tengok table dan contoh-contoh vitamin ini? Ingat tadi, 2 slide sebelum ini, saya cakap coenzyme, kadang terus ada, but it also involves the vitamins that are precursors to coenzymes. This slide is showing you that vitamin B2, niacin, and vitamin B3 are precursors to the cofactors FAD, FMN, NADP+, NAD+, and coenzyme A. Ito sadya yang mau disampaikan dalam slide ini. Now let's learn about the third type of cofactor, which is prosthetic groups. Prosthetic groups are non-protein components of a conjugated protein. Just as a reminder, a conjugated protein is a protein that functions in interaction with other chemical groups attached by covalent bonding or weak interactions. Maksudnya, conjugated protein adalah protein yang ada benda lain melekat kepada dia. Benda lain yang melekat kepada dia itu adalah prosthetic group. Prosthetic groups can be organic, so if they're organic, they're things like vitamins, sugars, and lipids, and if they're inorganic, they are things like metal ions. Prosthetic groups will bond covalently and tightly to the protein. So, dia akan melekat kepada protein menggunakan covalent bond dan dia akan melekat dengan ketat. Examples of prosthetic groups is heme group, which you can find in hemoglobin. Function of it is to carry oxygen. Another example is in oxidizing enzymes. For example, cytochrome C and peroxidase. So dalam dua enzyme ini akan ada prosthetic group. You can also find prosthetic group that are iron-sulfur clusters, which is FES. Okay, ferrum and sulfur clusters, you can find it in enzymes such as ferredoxin, which will function to carry electrons during photosynthesis. So we will see them again when we learn about photosynthesis in the upcoming chapters. Now we are talking about prosthetic group and enzyme. Kalau kita cakap pasal enzyme sahaja, tanpa dia punya prosthetic group, itu adalah apoenzyme. Kalau kita cakap enzyme bersama dengan dia punya prosthetic group, itu adalah holoenzyme. So once again, tiada prosthetic group, enzyme sahaja, apoenzyme. Enzyme dan prosthetic group, holoenzyme. I hope that's quite easy to remember. If not, feel free to make your own notes and come back to this video or to these lecture notes again anytime. And that's pretty much it that we have to talk about for 4.2. So just a very quick summary. We learned about metal ions, coenzymes, and prosthetic groups. And we also learned about their traits, some examples, and some of their functions. I hope this has been helpful. That is the end of this subtopic. Come up with your own notes, and then let's continue on to the next video. Thank you very much for your time and your attention, and I will see you again soon. Bye!